हरि ओम। वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Welcome, dear friends. On behalf of Param Vedanta, a warm welcome to all our listeners. We continue with the second session of the 4 sessions of the final chapter of Alata Shanti Prakaranam. Some really interesting Vedantic topics are being discussed here. Gaudapada Acharya is clarifying a lot of doubts in these verses. Dr. Hegde will be moderating this session. Speakers are Dr. Ravi Shankar, Srimati Mamta Shankar, Srimati Ramaji, and Sri Ullas. Over to you, Dr. Hegde, to introduce the session.
Sadashiva-samarambam Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-pariyantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Om. We are in the second of the 3 sessions in which we are taking an opportunity to summarize the 100 Karikas of the Alata Shanti Prakaranam. In the last class, we covered up to about verse 22. The first portion of the Alata Shanti Prakaranam predominantly dealt with different schools, both the Nastika and the Astika schools, wherein Gaudapadacharya viewed the various theories of creation according to the different schools. Why he did that? Because as per Advaita Vedanta, led by Gaudapadacharya, there is no creation. And when you evaluate every theory, even though they are logic-based, most of them have flaws, and he put each of the different philosophies against each other, and they neutralized each other. After discussing all of these different Astika and Nastika schools of philosophy, in the rest of this Karika, till the very end, Gaudapadacharya wants to reinforce Advaita Vedanta, the essential principle being just this: Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. This message that I am the only reality, I as Brahman, not this body-mind complex. This body-mind complex is a mithya, along with the entire world. And to be able to realize I am then. Now, this is not easy, but this has been told so many times. That is why this chapter is called a Mananam Pradhana Prakaranam. Mananam means this essential doubt. The doubt will come, how can I be Brahman? How can this world, which is so tangible and real, how can this be mithya? There is something called Brahman, which I cannot see. And you're talking about that which cannot see, cannot experience, that which cannot be described, and that is the only reality. Now, if this knowledge is going to be doubtful. That means even if I have an iota of doubt, samshaya sahita jnanam is as good as ajnanam. Swamiji gives a nice example of a glass of water is kept before you and you're about to drink, and somebody just takes a glass away and he says, I'm not sure, I have an inkling, a possibility that the water may be contaminated. Now, the inkling may be just 1%. There is a 1% doubt that the water may be contaminated. Even if there is a 1% doubt, am I going to consume that where there is some doubt? So this chapter is about all doubt clarification and the doubt about what is the only reality. Gaudapadacharya is absolutely not compromising on his theory. And his theory is na kaschit jayate jivaha. There is no jiva, no jagat ever born. Sambhava asya na vidyate. Yetat tat uttamam satyam. He says this is the highest truth. Now, he says with all conviction, but we still have a lot of doubt. Added to our confusion, if you see the Veda Purva part and even the various Upanishads, initially make a compromise, and all the Upanishads we studied until we came to Mandukya, every Upanishad began with its own theory of creation. And they said, how Akasha came from Brahman, and from Akasha came Vayu. Ultimately, all the Upanishads say that this whole world is born out of Brahman. Now, why did all the Upanishads and the Veda Purva speak about that this whole creation has come out of the infinite? Now, this is what we call as Adhyaropa Apavada. It is a deliberate superimposition, and subsequently in teachings like in Mandukya or in the same Upanishad later on, there is a subsequent negation. The teacher says, although I have told you earlier, now that you are mature, I want you to say, Mano Buddhi Hankara Chittani Naham. Why? Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivo. So the teacher does what is called an Adhyaropa Apavada. Now, all this adds to the confusion of the student, and therefore Gaudapadacharya spends almost 100 of these Karikas trying to repeat the same thing. So through repetitions, we are going through a certain form of reinforcement. One of Gaudapadacharya's Adau Ante Yat Nasti, that which is not there in the beginning, that which is not there in the end, is as good as not there. He says, whatever is not there in all three periods of time, that is considered as mithya. What is satya? That which is there in all three periods of time. Another important karika. Another truth which Gaudapadacharya, which reinforces, which will be spoken to by all our teachers in our class today. Again, very difficult to believe, and Gaudapadacharya insists on this, that experience does not prove reality. Utility does not prove reality. So it may be ETU, it may be transactable, it may be experienceable, it may have utility, there may be a lot of order when you look at the world around. Just because of all these reasons does not prove reality. We have the rope snake example, you have the sunset sunrise example. In fact, he goes a step ahead and says, whatever you can see and experience with your sense organs and your mind, that is unreal. Why? Because the experiencer, who is other than the instrument or the object of experience, that is the only reality. This is what has to enter into our mind somehow. And when that happens, what happens? Something phenomenal happens. Anadi mayaya shupto yada jiva prabhutyate. So we have been in a state of a slumber from anadi, from time immemorial. And we have to wake up to that ajam, anidram, aswapnam, advaitam, to that state of non-duality, which is beyond the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. In today's chapters in today's Prakarana, which is called the Alata Shanti Prakarana. It will be described again by uh, Ullas and others who are presenting. Ramaji will also be speaking about Alata Shanti Prakarana. Alata refers to a torch which has a flame at one end. Now, when the flame is moving, you see various patterns. And because of these patterns, the patterns are unreal, caused by spandape or because of movement. But what is the reality? The reality is ekam, the tip, the illumined flame, that Brahman, that which is independent, swatantra, whereas all the patterns are unreal. And the light of the Alata, which is like comparable to Brahman, is the only reality. With this background, we will listen to four of our speakers, which will be summarizing a lot of these karikas. Let us pay attention and how will they deal with it. Now, they will address certain questions and answer these questions. Dr. Ravi Shankar, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In this section, we would like to go back to the 7th verse of the Mandukya. And that's a very important verse because Nanta Prajnana Bahi Prajnam, it goes like that. And the important part or phrase that's of significance in today's class is the Prapanchopashamanam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyate Sa Atma Sa Vigneya. It is this Prapanchopashamanam, that this creation itself is not there. Only then we are into Shantam Shivam Advaitam. In the next slide, we will come to this question that if we are in those avastha traya, Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti, and we have not understood Turiya, then we are continuing to be in samsara. So the question is, what is Turiya as per the Karika 7? From the Mandukya Karika 7, Turiya is clearly explained as it is not consciousness of the external or the internal world. It is not a mass of sentiency. It is not insentient. It is never accessible to the sense organs. It is not related, asangha is not related to anything. Incomprehensible by this mind, the body-mind complex. It is uninferable, unthinkable, and it is indescribable. That is the aspect of Turiya. And if we don't understand Turiya, then the Avasthatraya, we can't understand that. The next slide, we would like to look at Mandukya Upanishad itself as 4 parts. Part 1 being a direct commentary on the 12 verses. Part 2 is raising to the ground that old structure of dualism. That is how Gaudapadacharya has taken it forward. And in the third part, he builds the fortress of non-duality. And then he, in the fourth part, he further builds an intellectual buttress to protect that new structure. And this is the most important part of reinforcing our mind to clearly say that there is the Jagan Mithya and Aham Satya, I am the truth. In the next slide, we would notice that the very purpose of this entire chapter is, of course, we know Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, but now we have to understand it is Aham Satyam, I am the truth, and the whole Jagat is Mithya. The first step is Sarva Dvaita Vada Nirashaha. You negate the Dvaitam. As long as there are two, there is creation. And that is because of avidya. Or in a bigger sense, it's because of Maya. Avidya is at a lower level. Maya is at as a macro level. And the second purpose is, having understood a wee bit of Advaita Darshanam, we have to reinforce it and live it as here and now. In the next slide, we would break down. Swamiji has broken down these karikas for a better understanding. And the 1st to the 10th is an introduction. The 11th to the 27th is Paramatma Nirasha, which is negation of the dualistic systems. And then the Vedanta Sara is discussed from the 28th to the 54th verse, which is reinforcing the Advaita teaching of Vedanta. Then the discussion is about the Vedanta sadhanani, the disciplines that are required for getting into Vedanta Sara. And the conclusion or the Upasamhara is from the 91st to the 100th verse. In the next slide, we understand three different aspects about the discussion on creation. All of them want to have moksha, whatever be the philosophy, but there is a difference between Advaita and the rest. To have a glimpse of what the difference is, Sankhya philosophy says that beginningless Prakriti or basic matter has produced creation, and that is negated. Dvaitins would say that creation is based on karma theory. That means there is a cause, and so there is an effect. And because of karma, there is a shariram. The Bauddha Darshanam, which is pretty close, say that the Yogachara Matam or the Kshanika Vijnana Pravahavada, this Jagat, they say is Mithya. They understand that this Jagat is Mithya. They also understand that consciousness alone is Satyam, but they are convinced that this consciousness is momentary. And so they use the word Kshanika Vijnana Pravaha. So there is a difference between them and what Advaita is being explained, particularly in these parts of the Mandukya through Gaudapadacharya's teachings. As long as we understand that there is Karya Karana Sambandha, that means there is a creation, we are in samsara. And so this illusion of causality is the important aspect of the Karikas in this section, which we will be dealing now. In the next slide, we would slowly try to understand that whatever was taught in the Vaitatya Prakaranam is being reinforced here. So in Vaitatya Prakaranam, it was the understanding that we had, we would see was that there was very clearly the causality was being taken away, and that is being reinforced here. In the next slide, we come to this question. What are the four principles that are being dealt with in this particular Karika? And to understand this, Pujya Swami Paramarthanandaji has clearly given us these four important principles based on which the understanding of these verses will be very clear. In the 33rd verse, he says that there is too little space for all those dream objects to be there. And then there is too little time to reach the scene of the dream and to return to that is explained in the 34th verse. The dream transactions are in a different reality. The waking transactions are in a different reality. The transactions in dream cannot be counted as transactions in the waking reality is being highlighted in the 35th verse. The dream objects like the body are not counted in the waking reality is in the 36th verse. Why is this example of dream taken to explain causality? There are other examples too, but the understanding through dream is probably going to be an easier way to clear the doubts that we have. In this 33rd verse, Sarve Dharma Mrisha Swapne, the falsity of dream, the space limit, is being highlighted. All the entities are unreal in dream is something that we are very clear and we are able to realize it as soon as we get up. And since this is a projection within our body, How would an elephant which is projected in a dream fit in that limited space of our brain or of our mind? Within such a limited space, how can such a huge creature be uh, be limited? How could it be there in that limited space? So this is an example taken to say that this limited space, now we would understand that there is desha kala vastu. And so now he is touching about the desha, the space. And this space in dream, which can be very big, cannot fit into our Jagrat Avastha, the mind, is being highlighted in this falsity of dream. In the next slide, we understand the effect of the time limit. Can you describe the time in dream? Na yuktam darshanam gatva. In this verse, we have a very clear example that a person in South India wants to go to Kashi and he comes back and he has had Kashi Vishwanath Darshan. One does not travel to experience dream objects. When he is awake, he realizes that he is not in Kashi, that he is still in the same place. And it takes such a long time to go and come, but the requisite time in a dream is much shorter. So the requisite time for the journey is insufficient. And when we wake up, we realize that there is a difference in time as well as the location in dream. This is also very clearly something that we can understand with our own experience. So the falsity of a dream appears true to a dreamer. For a waker, the Jagat is true. It's the whole truth. But these two examples clearly tell us the falsity of dream in relation to space and time. In the next verse, the discussion is Mitradehi Sah Samyatra. Your thoughts on transaction in the dream, the falsity of dream transactions. Now, there are two friends and they have had a transaction of some money or finances in the dream. But when a person wakes up, neither is there the friend, nor the transaction, nor the money in his hand, or nor has he lost the money that he has given to his friend. So after conversing with his friends on waking up, he realizes it's illusion in nature. And moreover, whatever one acquires in dream is not seen upon waking up. So clearly, we are able to understand up to this level the falsity of the dream through dream transactions. In the next slide, now comes the question, Swapne cha vastuhu kayaha, the falsity of dream objects. While we are a dreamer, the dream body is not substantial. It is different from the real body that we experience. As with the body, so with everything else, everything that is cognized is unreal. In the dream world, we are aware of our dream body. It is mithya. It is the same in the Jagrat Avastha, where we are aware of our body-mind complex. Whatever is an experience is unreal. It is mithya. It is cognized. The observer is the only truth. So the dream objects are also explained as a falsity of dream. In the next verse, we see in this slide, what is the role of causality in the Avasthatraya? So now Gaudapadacharya is trying to link the dream to the waking state. It is fairly easy to understand that the dream is falsified because when we are awake, all the aspects of desha, kala, vastu transactions in dream are clearly a mithya. How do you accept the same in the waking state? The causality links dream state to waking state. If you logically analyze, it is only because of the experiences that we have in the waking state that the dream state comes into being. Shall we say that whatever we have experienced in dream is the causality for the waking state? You cannot say that. But it is more or less similar. Both of them, if analyzed logically, will be found not to exist. What is the aim? The aim of this explanation of these verses is that there is no causality between the dream and the waking experiences. It is to falsify that the waking experience is not the adhisthana for the dream experience. From this initial conclusion on causality, we have to arrive independently at the same conclusion that both the dream state and the waking state, which is two parts of the avastha-traya, are both unreal. In the next slide, we have this question: does waking cause dream? That's a common view. We all understand and we imagine that whatever we have experienced as our subconscious mind is projected when we are in dream. And the explanation in the 37th verse is, since it is experienced like the waking state, the dream state is regarded as being caused by it. Since dream has the waking state as its cause for that dreamer alone and not for others, the waking state is regarded as true. I have a dream, the other person has not seen my dream. So my experience is responsible for my dream. But in the waking state, my waking state in the Jagrat Avastha is quite similar to the waking state Jagrat Avastha of another person. So how do you correlate these two? This is where this Jagrat Avastha and the Jiva Jagat Ishvara, or the triangular format, makes us sink into samsara. We have to understand the mithyatva of the Jagrat Avastha. We understand mithyatva of Jagrat Avastha only when we understand that Brahman is in different forms, Nama Rupa, even in the Jagrat Avastha. If we get into that state, we are sure that there is a mithyatva even of the Jagrat Avastha. Otherwise, it is difficult to link the mithyatva of the dream state and the mithyatva of the Jagrat Avastha. We go to the next one. Ultimately, the question is creation real? Why is creation being declared unreal? And this 38th verse, since creation cannot be established as a fact, we have to declare all things to be unborn. Of a non-existing thing from an existing thing, there cannot be any origination whatsoever. A little more clarity on this. Whatever is unborn never dies. Whatever is born has to die. And whatever is born, if something is born out of Brahman, it is not the truth. Because if something is born from Brahman, there is Dvaitam, there are two. Whereas in Advaitam, there is no creation. It is only a change in the Nama Rupa. And so the question again that we have to clearly try to understand with this example of dream state is, why is creation being declared as unreal? Naja bhutat abhutasya. From a non-existing thing, an existing thing can never come up. And therefore, origination has to be declared as unreal. In the next slide, we notice about a little discussion of emotions in the two avasthas. What is the evidence of the emotional reaction in the two avasthas? If you see a snake in the Jagrat Avastha, our heartbeat goes up and we run away. And even if we project a snake in our dream, the heartbeat goes up and we sweat. So there is an emotional state in both the avasthas. By seeing an unreal object in the waking state and then projecting it in dream, the emotional effect is there in both. But seeing an unreal object in dream, one does not see it when we wake up. So we have projected the snake, but we don't see it when we wake up, though there has been an emotional experience or an emotional reaction to it. And this further goes to state that there is a unreality of the projection in the dream. In the next slide, the highlighting aspect now, after understanding these parts of the dream and Jagrat Avastha, Gaudapada Acharya is saying, there are so many doubts that keep coming again and again, and we don't understand this even now. He says, do you confirm causality? And Gaudapada Acharya in this verse is saying, Na asti asad hetukam asat, sad asat hetukam tataha, sat cha sad hetukam na asti, sad hetukam asat kutaha. A little difficult to understand, but we would read it as the unreal cannot have unreal for its cause. A real cannot be produced from the unreal. The real cannot be the cause of another real because Advaitam will be lost and it will be Dvaitam. Then how can the real be the cause of the unreal? There's a little jigsaw. But if we try to understand this in the next slide, Asat cannot produce Asat. Horns of a hare, hares don't have horns. They cannot produce castles in the air. You can never build castles in the air. This is an example of Asat giving rise to Asat. Asat giving rise to Sat. We never attend the wedding of a barren woman's son, and that is the example of Asat giving rise to Sat. It's not possible. Similarly, Sat producing Sat. Can one reality produce another reality? It can never produce another reality because Brahman is only one. Everything else is Namarupa. And can Sat produce Asat? From reality to unreality is absolutely absurd. This verse continues the thought flow from the following, from the verse 38. In the next slide, the gist of this false knowledge is highlighted in the 41st verse. Just as through false knowledge in the waking state, one may take a fanciful whim as being real, so too through false knowledge in dream, one sees fanciful objects that are real only there. So the fanciful objects are in a dream and they look real, and the real aspects of the Jagrat Avastha, we continue to look at them as real, though we have to falsify them as a lower order of reality. It is a Vyavaharika Satta. This understanding is the difference between an Ajnani and a Jivan Mukta. This understanding makes us live in Vyavahara, doing everything 100%, but realizing the impermanence of the Jagrat Avastha as well as the impermanence of the world. It is only then that we can be in the binary format and move from Mananam to Nididhyasanam. Shri Guru Bhyo Namah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ravi Shankar. You will remember the beautiful example of King Janaka's dream. King Janaka had a very vivid dream in which he suffered as a beggar. And when he woke up, he had the real doubt, was his experience as a beggar, was that real? Or that he is King Janaka, which is real? Fortunately, he had the great master who came in just at that time when this doubt was really bothering. Which one is real? And Ashtavakra makes it very clear. Whatever is an object of your experience, whatever you have seen in your dream, whatever you see in the so-called waking phase, both of them are unreal. With that, once we are convinced that whatever I have experienced, the world around me and this body mind is very similar to a dream and not so real, this is where we make a significant progress in Vedanta. And when you are sure now that this waking world is exactly like dream world, now you begin to be open to the teacher who says, whatever you experience is not real, the experiencer is real. And that we will see in the subsequent Karikas. Mamata, please.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gaudapada in the Mandukya Karika reiterates ultimate Vedanta teaching or Upanishad teaching called Ajativada. That is, Brahman alone is reality and ultimate truth. Nothing is born out of Brahman. The world or creation is an appearance, and we all are none other than Brahman. Brahman continues to be non-dual without a second thing. This is also termed as Advaitam or non-duality. However, Upanishad and also Gaudapadacharya realizes that the ultimate truth, that is non-dual Brahman, being the only reality, is not easy to accept or assimilate for most of the people. So, Gaudapada presents an alternative to this problem. In the next slide, let us look at it as what is that Gaudapada is talking about as an alternative or variation to ultimate truth, and why does he do that in Mantra 42. In Mantra 42, Gaudapada talks about two obstacles that keeps the ultimate truth away from people, that is Upalambat, Samacharat and Vastu Vadinaha. In the next slide, first obstacle that Gaudapada is talking about is associated with ETU of the word, that is, experienceability, transactability, and utility of the word. Gaudapada uses two words for the ETU of the world, Upalambat, that is, experienceability of the world, and Samachara, that is, world is in orderly fashion, or we can transact and there is utility in the world. The ETU makes the world seem so real for most of the people. And the second obstacle, Gaudapada says, Vastuvadinaha, that is dependence on or inclination towards worldly objects. Due to self-ignorance, we identify with body-mind complex and consider limited beings or individual jivatmas. This results in limitation and incompleteness that creates physical and emotional dependency or support and relationships with external world that includes worldly activities and religious activities for security, peace, and happiness. In the next slide, accepting world is real means accepting triangular format for relationships, that is Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara. So, fear associated with non-duality or Advaitam is losing these relationships if Advaitam is accepted. So, for those people who argue that world is Satyam or real because of ETU and are scared of Advaitam, for the reasons we just discussed, Vedas accepts creation as a deliberate compromise with the ultimate truth, but only temporarily. In the next slide, and for people who would like to believe world is real, Gaudapada says in mantras 42 and 43, wise men or sages through Upanishad teaching about the creation, wise men or sages through Upanishad teaching, they teach about creation or origination of the world only temporarily. That is, world is originated from God or Ishvara or God with name and form, which means world originates from Brahman through Maya. So, Brahman would be the cause. and enable these people to develop devotion to God with form. This brings us to our next question in the next slide. That is, what are the implications of the compromise with the ultimate truth, and how much is the impact of this approach, which is discussed in the mantra 43. This compromise with the ultimate truth can result in jati dosha, as mentioned in the mantra 43. And in the next slide, jati dosha means people, in the next people could get attached to Ishvara or God with name and form through devotion to God and stay in the cycle of birth or rebirth or in samsara. However, this dosha, Gaudapada says, is in the mantra, he says, is insignificant or negligible because with one's devotion to God, one is guided or on their own can get an inclination to take on Upanishad teachings. In the next slide, these Upanishad teachings introduce sadhanas which enable to purify the mind through Karma Yoga, condition it through Upasana Yoga to spiritually progress. This way, one's concept of God evolves, and through Gnana Yoga, gain the subtle spiritual knowledge, the ultimate truth, that is, claim I am Brahman, and then get established in Brahman, and realize world is an appearance, or accept negation of the world that has been perceived as real so far. Here we can see there is Adhyaropa Apavada, which Sir has been talking, keeps telling us often about it. Origination of the world is termed Adhyaropa, and later negation of the world is Apavada. This means the spiritual journey of a seeker entails world dependence to God dependence to self dependence. Self dependence is independence or realize Advaitam, that is Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. In the next slide, in mantra 44, we will see what analogy Gaudapada presents to re-emphasize the ultimate truth. Mantra 44 emphasizes on the fact that intrinsic nature of anything do not change. Gaudapada explains this fact with the help of magician and his magic elephant. In the next slide, magician creates an illusory elephant. People can actually see the elephant right in front of them, but they cannot touch it. The elephant moves about and behaves exactly as a real elephant. At the end of the display, the magician suddenly withdraws the whole illusion and makes the elephant disappear. Even though the elephant is supported by both perception and behavior, it does not prove the reality of the elephant. The intrinsic nature of a magic elephant is to appear real, but not really real. In the same way, perceiving objects and even seeing their behavior does not prove the reality of objects in the waking world. In other words, perception and behavior are not sufficient conditions to prove the reality of worldly objects. Brahman, through the magical skill called Maya, makes the creation appear, and most people take it as real because it has ETU. In the next slide, in the mantras 45 and 46, let us look at how is Gaudapada describing Brahman and individual beings. Mantra 45 contains the concluding statement on Brahman. Three apparent characteristics of Brahman have been highlighted by Gaudapada Acharya: Jati Abhasam, Chala Abhasam, and Vastu Abhasam. In the next slide, that is, Brahman is appearing as Jati Abhasam, that is, appears to be born as the Jiva or individuals or appears as the world. Next is Chala Abhasam, that is, appears to move in the form of arrival and departure or sixfold changes, or as doer and one who reaps the results of the activities that are being done. And lastly, Vastu Abhasam, that is, appears to be a material object with properties like with properties like, for example, a person, table, chair is an object, and all their attributes like person is tall, chair is gray in color, so on, are the attributes or properties. However, Brahman itself is Aja, birthless, then Achalam, unmoving, avastutvam, non-material or attributeless. This birthless, unmoving, non-material Brahman is calm, undisturbed, unaffected, mentioned as Shantam in the mantra, and is appearing as universe with names and forms. In the next slide, mantra 46 is for Jiva or the individual being. We will see how Chittam and Dharmaha that is in this mantra have been referred to, that has been referred to in this mantra from the perspective of Atma. In the last slide, we have learned that the world does not have origination or existence, but it is only an appearance in I, the Atma, or pure consciousness. In the mantra, Chittam means pure consciousness, and Dharmaha means that which upholds or supports human beings. So, Chittam, the pure consciousness, being birthless, is the supporter of all the Jivatmas or individual beings. And essential nature of Jivatmas is pure consciousness, and hence all the Jivatmas are really not limited Jivatmas with body and mind, but are unborn and eternal. Actually, now the last slide. Next slide. The body of the Jivas is an appearance caused by Maya. One has to come out of the notion that I am individual Jiva identified with body and mind complex and claim one's true nature, that is Brahman. Only if we know this and are established in it, we can be out of samsara, that is, binding desires and associated worldly activities resulting in cycle of birth and rebirth. By knowing this and being firmly established in it, jnanis or wise men avoid duality and hence samsara. Having the notion that one is born out of God leads to samsara, but knowing that one is identical with God or we are God, that is Aham Brahma Asmi, and established in it alone will get a person out of samsara and hence liberation or moksha while living. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Mamta, for dealing with a very important part of Advaita Vedanta in the Alata Shanti Prakaranam and clearly explaining these important Karikas. In these Karikas, Gaudapadacharya wants us to be absolutely clear. There is only one reality, that is Brahman. The world that I see and experience is Mithya, and my true nature is similar or identical with that of Brahman. But then it is difficult to believe how I can be Brahman, and I see multiplicity, I see duality. The crux of the whole thing that Gaudapadacharya wants us to say, there is no such thing called creation. Why? Because from the infinite, whose nature is one of infinite, and therefore the infinite cannot undergo any change, no real creation is possible. But I'm seeing everything. That means, although you see from gold so many ornaments, the ornaments are only name and form. In reality, from Brahman, nothing other than Brahman, there can be nothing. And you remember this Gita verse 4.34, Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam. My true nature is I was Brahman, I am Brahman, I ever will be Brahman. Whatever I see and experience is none other than Brahman. These are various forms, and that we will understand through the Alata Shanti Prakarana, which will be explained to us by Ramaji. Ramaji, please.
Alata Shanti Prakaranam Karikas 4.472 Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Alata Shanti Prakaranam Karikas 4.47252. Gaudapadacharya reinforces the teaching of Ajativada, which says that no creation is born out of Brahman. He introduces a unique example of Alatam, a firebrand, because of which the chapter 4 has got the name Alata Shanti Prakaranam. Now in this slide, we see Karya-Karana Sambandha. Brahman, the Adhishtanam, is at Paramarthik and Adhyastha Prapanchaha, or at Vyavaharika Satta, a lower order of reality like the waker and the dream world. The Karya-Karana Sambandha can be accepted only when the order of reality is same between them. Thus, he negates Karya-Karana Sambandha between the Brahman and the world. So only a seeming cause and effect relationship can be assumed to exist between them. In the presence of Maya, the experienced pluralistic world is superimposed on the Brahman like the rope snake on a piece of rope. It cannot be classified either as Sat, the existent, or Asat, the non-existent, or so it is called Mithya or Anirvachaniyam. He establishes this Sat Mithya Sambandha between them from Karika's 47 to 52, introducing the powerful Alata Prakaranam. Next slide. Alatam example. Alatam is a flaming torch or a stick with glowing tip like an agarbatti or a burning sparkler. On moving the alatam rapidly in darkness, different patterns like circles or wavy lines of fire appear and disappear depending upon the alata spandanam, the type of movement. The glowing tip represents a consciousness which is also one. The surrounding darkness is the Maya and the patterns representing the entire apparent world. The next slide describes the common features of Vijnanam, the Brahman, and Alatam, the Firebrand. The glowing tip of the Firebrand resembles the consciousness in every way. Both are Ekaha, Advaitam, but multiplicity experienced is only in the patterns and appearances in the world. Both are Swaprakashaha, self-luminous, or revealing, illuminating the patterns or the apparent world. Both of them have seeming Karya-Karana Sambandha, that is, between Firebrand and the patterns, as well as the consciousness and all appearances as the world. The fire is the only reality in the Firebrand and not the patterns. Fire Satyam and patterns Mithya. Similarly, the consciousness alone is the only reality and all the appearances in it are not real entities. Therefore, it is Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Both lend existence to the appearances. And the last point is Abhasam due to Spandanam. Appearances of patterns depend on the actual motion of the firebrand, but the consciousness due to Maya seems to vibrate and project the world as thoughts. This multiplicity is experienced in the waking and the dream state. Multiplicity is projected as Karta, the doer of the action, Bhokta, enjoyer of the result, and Gnata, knower of everything that is birth, death, etc. at microcosmic level. In the next slide, we see the Anvaya Vyatireka, that is Abhasam and Anabhasam. This is a part of Anumana Pramana, a means of knowledge. Anvayaha means positive inference, concordance, or agreement. The agreement which exists between two things that are present together. For example, smoke and fire. Here, Anvaya is where there is smoke, there is fire. Vyatireka means the negative inference, the agreement between two things in their absence, such as absence of both fire and smoke. Here, Vyatireka is where there is no smoke, there is no fire. In the next slide, we see the Anvaya Vyatireka between Alatam and the patterns that appears. Grahana Grahaka Abhasam is the key word in this shloka 47. The Anvaya follows. The appearance of the firebrand. Alatam in motion alone appears as several patterns, and the waker gets divided into perceiver perceived duality in dream. Same way, the consciousness seemingly gets divided into grahaka, the subject, and grahana, the object, because of the seeming motion of the consciousness. Now, in the shloka 48, we see the vyatireka, the negative inference. When the firebrand is at rest, all the experienced patterns totally disappear. The firebrand remains the same without being a karyam or karanam. Likewise, even when the pluralistic world appears, the non-dual consciousness remains unchanged. The mind, thoughts, and their experiences are resolved in the deep sleep state. The dual patterns and the appearances are only a manifestation upon the non-dual. So by Anvaya Vyatireka logic, it is inferred that the motion or the thoughts due to Maya is the only cause of all appearances. The consciousness remains ajam, birthless or changeless at all times, like the tip of the firebrand in motion, even when it is subjected to vibrations. Next, Gaudapadacharya focuses on the nature of the appearances that is seen in the next slide. Appearances na anyato bhuvaha, neither enter the firebrand nor the consciousness from elsewhere, na nirgataha, nor emerge from the firebrand or the consciousness itself when it is in motion. The appearances na anyatra bhuvaha, neither go away somewhere else, na pravishanti, nor enter the firebrand or the consciousness when the motion stops. They are appearances of the firebrand of or the consciousness itself with different names and forms like pot and clay. The appearances do not exist independent of the firebrand or the consciousness because they are not two separate substances. The Karika says, Dravyatva Abhava Yogataha. The patterns or the world are only appearances or abhasas to both. Now, in the same slide, we see the application of the metaphor. Maya is responsible for the mind and the flickering thoughts for the world. The world seemingly existed as thoughts in Ajnana Kala and disappeared in Gnana Kala. The consciousness with distinct names and forms is the world like dream objects. Brahman is the only substance that is real. It is not the cause of the world because they are not two separate entities. Any relationship like causation requires two entities, dvinishtha sambandha. Understand the falsity of the world, causality is superimposed on the non-dual Brahman and it is ultimately negated. The consciousness and the firebrand lend existence for now the focus has now shifted to the appearances formed when the consciousness is vibrated by ignorance or Maya is seen in the next slide. In the next slide, we see that the Karikas 49, 50, 51, and the first half of Karikas 52 are identical except for the words Alate and Vignane. Madam, please, previous slide. Karya Karanata Bhavaha is absent because there is Dravyatva Abhavaha. Therefore, cause-effect relationship achintyaha, beyond comprehension. Thus, causality has been proven to have no existence from the absolute viewpoint. This has been the main drive of Sri Gaudapada's message so far. Hari Om. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Rama Madam, for giving us a very nice explanation of this beautiful description of the Alata. And what is Alata Shanti? Alata is compared to Brahman. When the firebrand, when the torch is moved, you see a lot of illusory patterns. Sometimes you see one of those light shows, those laser shows, and so much of creation can happen out of nothing. You see buildings, you see volcanoes, you see animals and all that. So this is a description of what is Alata. Spandana, when consciousness comes into motions, you will see various amounts of pattern. When it becomes still, there is no world whatsoever. Where did this world come? From where did this world go to? All these things cannot be explained at all. That is why Gaudapadacharya is insisting again and again, there is no real world other than Brahman. And whatever you see is like dream or like magic, useful, but not important. Let us not give too much importance. From a Vyavaharik angle, we have to do whatever we can, follow the rules of the world, do whatever is my responsibility in the world, but never give too much importance. When I give too much importance, there is a problem. Ullas will continue this description and give us greater clarity. Ullas, please.
Thank you, sir. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So, as sir mentioned that we are mainly talking about here the world, the illusion that it is, but let's take it in the context of Alata Shanti Prakaran. So, let's take a whole gist of what exactly is this Prakaran about, and it will be a repetition. We have discussed this before also. Mainly, there are what is the purpose? There are three purposes for this whole Prakaran. One is the negation of other dualistic systems, as Dr. Ravi Shankar also mentioned. And what are these dualistic systems? That there is God, there is world, there is a creation happening. So the negation of that. Then there is reinforcement of the Vedantic teaching. Like what exactly is this Vedantic teaching? And then what are the sadhanas to get those? So then the next question comes is like, how do we achieve these purposes? So the first one is because we are saying that there is creation happening, that's why there is dualistic systems. So to negate that, here Gaudapada uses he refutes the theory of creation itself, that there is no such thing as creation. There is things only which are appearing and disappearing. They're manifesting and unmanifesting, but there is no real creation happening. The meaning of creation is that some substance is being created out of some other substance. So that is not happening. Then what is the reinforcement? Here we are saying we have always seen Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya and I am Brahmasmi. So Aham Satyam Jagan Mithya, or this Jagat that I see is Mithya, and Mithya obviously means that which does not exist in all periods of time. It just appears and goes, and as Sir mentioned a while ago, that something which did not exist in the beginning, does not exist at the end, then it is as good as non-existent. So this Jagat appears for some time, but then it keeps on changing, it keeps on going away. So then that is not real. Then the only thing which is real is I am that. And when I recognize myself as consciousness. Then what are the spiritual disciplines is mainly recognizing my real self, not the limited self that I am, the unlimited, the Turiya self, the higher self. These are the sadhanas that we will go through. So that's the gist of the Alata Shanti Prakaran. Now let's move on to the actual verses. So the first verse it says is Dravyam Dravyasya Hetuhu Syad Anyat Anyasya Chaivahi. In the next slide, we can go directly. Here we know what we are actually very much obsessed with the cause-effect relationship. And here they are trying to negate that only, that there is such a thing called cause-effect relationship. Because if you have a cause and if you have an effect, then what it essentially means that there was a substance and it gave rise to another substance. And substance here means something which has its own existence without relying on anything else. So here it says that there is nothing like that happening. No real substance is being born. There is only a manifestation happening, only a change in the nama rupa happening, only an appearance is coming. So what we see as a pot is nothing but clay only with a different nama rupa. In the same way, the Brahman is only appearing as different and as a world. They don't really have a separate substantiality. And once there is no separate substantiality, you cannot have a cause effect relationship. So many times we see that people would say that the man created the world, or the world created the God created world, or the world was created by the God. But in fact, if we have to see the God in the world itself, like in Vishwarupa Darshan we have seen. So, and in the next verse it says, evam na chittaja dharmash chittam. No, sir, previous slide only. Vapi na dharmajam. So sometimes we say that the consciousness gave rise to matter, or the matter gave rise to consciousness. But that is not the thing, because there are no two things. The Brahman itself was there in past, it's itself there in present, and it's the only one that is in future. Only there are different appearances happening. So there are no two things. So we can say that a wave was born out of ocean, but those two are also just different name and form of water itself. So water gave rise to water. Now you cannot say water is the cause and water is the effect, because that is the substance, is the water only when we talk about different nama rupa is that when we get involved in this cause effect relationship. So there is no jivatma, there is no paramatma, there is only something called ekatma, which is Brahman. So in the next slide we see the next two verses. Yavad hetu phalaveshah tavad hetu phalodbhavah. We are saying that there is a cause and there is an effect. So because of this whole obsession, we get into the origination of things, we get into the birth of things, we get into the death of things, because we are obsessed so much into this cause and effect thing. And all the time, the what is the purpose of our human life has been that we consider ourselves an individual, we want to improve our self image, so we feel like I am limited in this manner, and then if I get something, or if I get rid of something, then that is going to give me so much of happiness, and that's how I improve myself. But all this is based on because I feel myself as a limited thing, and that gives rise to this cause effect relationship. So once that obsession ends, then this whole samsara fades away. And how does this obsession from cause effect relationship fades away? Once I get that purnatvam. And how do I get that purnatvam? Is again the same sadhanas that we have been studying, so that shravana, manana, nididhyasanam. Once we do those, then our understanding is that I'm not limited. And then all this samsara fades away. Then all this cause and effect relationship fades away. So that is the way how we can get rid of this samsara. Kshine hetu phalaveshe nasti hetu phalodbhava. Once that goes away, the whole samsara goes away. In the next slide, we see yavad hetu phalaveshe sansarah tavad ayata. Because of this whole cause and effect, again the samsara is born. What is the cause of samsara? This whole cause and effect, the obsession from that. And again, it is being told that Brahman and world are not two different things. That Firebrand example also, there are not two different things, just the one thing only, which, and there are two different visions of that, right? So if nothing is born, then there is nothing to be destroyed. So the world is not born, there is just an appearance, then there is nothing to be destroyed. So in the next verse, in the next slide, it says samvritya jayate sarvam shashvatam nasti tenavai. Now what is being told is that an Ajnani sees ornaments, whereas a Jnani sees gold. Because all this thing called birth is happening because of ignorance. Next slide, we'll see what is the cause of all these, this whole cause effect relationship also. It is ignorance. And there are two things which are being talked about. Earlier, Gaudapada was talking about Ajativada, that the world is not born itself. That is one way of thinking at it. And then the other one is Maya Jativada, that the world is seemingly born. So now you can say that ornaments are not even born, because again gold is there. So that is Ajativada. Or Maya Jativada says that the ornaments are seemingly born, because they get some kind of a nama rupa after some time, and then there is gold always there. So gold was there before, gold is there now, gold is going to be there later. Only the ornaments are going to be only for a specific period of time. So that is Mithya. So that is Maya Jativada. So because this is ignorance, so it is not eternal, it is only lasting as long as the ignorance lasts. The moment you get to know that there was no snake but there is only rope, then the snake goes away, and then the intelligent people would say that there was, even when there was I was thinking that there was some snake, even when at the time when I knew, I thought world was real, at that time all the fears, all the anxiety that I had was not really there. So that was not existent. So that snake never existed. Once that knowledge comes, then only it happens. Until the ignorance is there, the world continues to happen. So that knowledge part is very important here. So we don't need to eliminate the world. We cannot eliminate the world. For example, there is sun, and there are so many different mirrors are there. One is a concave mirror, convex mirror, a muddy mirror, a blurry mirror, and there are so many different type of reflections. Can we really get rid or eliminate those reflections? Why we cannot? Because the reflections don't really exist. The existence is only the real sun. What we can do is we can break the mirror. But then if we bring another mirror, the another reflection will come, because reflections don't really exist, so they cannot be eliminated. Similarly, the world does not exist. It cannot be eliminated. It was never born. It can never be destroyed, because it is just ignorance. There is no real cause and effect going on there. Just like a dream world also. It is just an illusion. It just happens in our mind. Once that dream is over, the illusion goes away. So in the last two verse, in the next slide, sir. Yatha mayad bijat jayate tanmayo ankurah. It is happening, all this is happening as if there is some magical creation happening by an Ishwar. Some illusory trees, illusory seed is there, and some illusory trees coming out of that. Like Dr. Ravi Shankar also mentioned that a kind of a marriage of a son of a barren woman. That is not really possible. So, it's like a magical creation happening. It's not really existent. And all of this world is, when it is not even existent, we cannot talk about its permanence or temporariness. It's not that the reflection is permanent or the reflection is temporary. You cannot do anything with the reflection. You just have to have the knowledge that it is there for the transactional purposes. As Sir said, it is useful to know that. It's not important. We don't have to rely too much on that why the reflection has a spot on it. Maybe the mirror has a spot on it, but we don't have to. We need to know that it is just a reflection. The original thing is different. So once we have that knowledge, and similarly, like Swami Anubhavanandaji gives a lot of example, like there is a husband, but husband is never real. The reality is man. The husband can have n number of problems, and tomorrow he can be called a father, and yesterday he was called a son. There are different forms being changed for a man. The man is the only existent one. There is no cause and effect relationship. Only that ignorance is causing all this, and that is what causes issues. So there is no real creation there. That's the bottom line message. And the last slide we'll see, the take home message from this is that one, there is no cause effect, because there are no two existent things from which one is going to another. World is nothing but an illusion because of ignorance, and ignorance can only be cured by this knowledge. Once that knowledge comes, the illusion goes away, the world goes away, all the problems that the world has created goes away, and there is no question of being something which is non-existent. You cannot say it is permanent or temporary. When it was born, how you can destroy it. These are like, words kind of, there is a limit to the words there. So sometimes that's why we say anirvachaniya maya. So we cannot explain it that way. Just the knowledge has to be there that this is just an illusion, it's just an ignorance, and nothing has really been created. There is only Brahman, there is only one reality, and that's that. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Ullas. Not easy to do what each of you have done, because these are extremely difficult concepts which have been explained in as clear a manner as possible. It leaves us to the same dilemma that King Janaka was. Which is real? Is my dream real, or is this world real? Now, there is a great Upanishadic mantra which says, Asatoma Sadgamaya. What is this which is real and what is unreal? And this is answered by Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. From where does this light come? From Guru and Shastra. Guru and Shastra will tell you, whatever I see and experience is not real, but the experiencer is real. And once this knowledge is established, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. I understand my true nature. That I was there, I will be there, and I am the only reality, and everything else is only a conditional reality. I need to, from a Vyavaharik angle, I need to do my bit, but never take that seriously. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Pranams to all our gurus and the Guru Parampara. We are truly fortunate, so blessed to have such a profound teaching given to us on a platter. We're grateful to our teachers and the speakers of the day. Param Vedanta appreciates its listeners. A big thank you to you. we must continue reinforcing that there is no jiva, that there is no creation, there is no world. Experience, transactability, and utility of the world does not make it real, does not prove its reality. The orderliness of the world does not prove its reality. And because we have accepted the world to be the truth for such a long, long time, does not make it real. We must give up our obsession with the world, that it's true. We must give up our ignorance. The world is an appearance in I, the Atma. We must remove this illusion of cause and effect. We must allow the triangular format to collapse. I am the only non-dual reality must be established. This was the second of the 4 sessions of Alata Prakaranam. Next week, Friday, 29th of November, we will have the 3rd session. Do log in. But before that, Praram Vedanta brings you a session, gift session, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation, session number 54 on the 25th of November. Let's conclude with the prayers. Please chant along. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.